Hey, welcome to Will Talks, and I'm so glad that we are here today with an amazing person, someone who's been working in the field of education for years, almost 15 or 20 years. So we need to say a big thank you to Devika Nadig from the Shikshangan Educational Initiatives. I am so happy, so humbled, and so proud to have this opportunity to have you here today, so that we can really start digging deep into your experiences as a school principal, as a person who really wants to change how education is conducted in the classrooms. And I also watched a lot of your YouTube shorts. I think you're putting up a lot of YouTube shorts and amazing content. Like, I'm learning so much from just watching those videos. Tell us a little bit more about what you've done in the past, and how did you get to where you are today, and your passions, and you can just speak your mind, because there's so much to learn from you.
Thanks, Willie. I got your name right as well, Willie Broad. Okay, so yeah, that's true. I started as a school teacher in your city, which is Mumbai. And I think those were probably the best days, because when you're teaching and if you have an excited class in front of you, that's the high that you get. So I taught, and then I went on to become a school principal. By that time, I had moved to the city of Pune. Mm-hmm. So it's a very large and very prestigious school, and it gets various kinds of children who come there. So I taught there as well as I was a school leader for 12 years. Wow. And somewhere along the journey, I felt that the key lies in teacher motivation and teacher preparation. So though I was actually having a staff about 200 to 50 people, I felt that I needed to go beyond this, and I needed to spread my work, and I needed to see whether I can coach more teachers, primarily for understanding the curriculum better, understanding pedagogy better, and trying to see whether they can make a difference to their individual classrooms, so that the way they teach reaches the last child on the last bench. That was the idea.
But this is amazing, right? Because it's very important. I mean, I think back in the UK, a principal is not called a principal. They're actually called head teachers.
That's right.
Because just in their name, it's installed what is their primary purpose. Like, their job is to lead learning. Their job is to head that process of leading learning. Yeah. How do you see that in India?
So picking up from what you're saying, I think in India, it's very complex, because it's an academic leader and an administrative leader rolled into one. Oh. So what happens is that if you are a school principal, the title of a principal, then you are also managing school buses, school uniforms, the textbook suppliers, the other vendors who come to you. And my take on this is this way, that I think it's far more difficult to be an academic leader than it is to be an administrative leader. I strongly believe that administration can be delegated, and you can have a lot of people taking care of all of this, which I just mentioned. But when you need to be an academic leader, you need to have a vast repertoire of knowledge of all the subjects, or fairly, if you're a science person, then all the sciences. And then if you're a humanities person. There's one more thing, Willie. I feel that the visibility comes from being an administrative leader, right? Because then you are the face of the school, you're meeting the vendors, you're meeting the parents, etc., etc. If you're an academic leader, then you're invisible. You have to be inside the classrooms. You have to be with the teachers. So I think, unfortunately, in our country, not many school principals, and I'm saying this with some kind of hesitation, but not many school principals are academic leaders. Largely, you will find them as administrative leaders. So we don't have a clear demarcation.
So what you're saying is, well, it's troubling because it's true.
It is.
Right? And there are so many things that come out of that conversation. For example, for me, I'm thinking it's easier for a principal to show her prowess in administration, talking to parents, handling a situation that went wrong, a little bit of motivation, and positive psychology and things like that. But what's probably not visible could be, as you said, instructional leadership.
Absolutely.
To be the lead learner, to train and teach, because that is like deep within kind of work.
That's the principal's principal responsibility.
That is the principal's principal responsibility, right?
So, and that's being shirked, unfortunately.
And if that is not seen, then it may not be acknowledged. And if it's not acknowledged, then it may not be well respected. If that's not respected, more people may not try to do that, which then kind of means that only principals who really, really deeply care, who are conscientious, who have not sold their soul, in that sense, start questioning the status quo and making change happen. I'm sure you are one of those principals. How did you deal with that? How did you deal with it?
Here's the tragedy, because who becomes a principal in private schools? A very good teacher. All right. Someone who's visible, whose work is visible. She's got the spunk, she's got the confidence. And where is confidence coming from? Because she has command on her subject knowledge.
And maybe even English.
Yes. So she gets to become the principal. Now, you might lose a good teacher and get a lousy principal. Because we have no training, and I'm saying this with full confidence that we do not have any kind of training in our country for you to become a school principal. So you have a B.Ed course. You also have an M.Ed course.
Yes.
M.Ed prepares you to be a teacher educator, because then you can go teach in B.Ed colleges, largely. You might do those degrees, but there is no really, a crafted program which will teach you everything: the academic leadership, instructional leadership, the organizational leadership, as well as the personal leadership, because, all these three come together, and that's what we do in our school leadership program, which you're aware of.
So that clearly shows that perhaps the reason most schools are not being able to do a good job is because the people at the helm just don't know how. The
They're
will
not
is
trained.
there, the intention is there. It's just that those skills are not honed or trained, and so much can be done in a program.
Yes.
What do you think made you successful as did you consider yourself to be a successful school leader? At what point did you consider that to happen? And did other people have such expectations on you, or you did it because you really genuinely cared to make change?
So I think it all starts with your own passion. About that, there is no doubt. Of course, I genuinely wanted to make a difference. Actually, even when you're stepping out of a B.Ed college, you feel so idealistic. You feel, I'll go out there and change the world. Then you go into the school and you say, "Ye to hangama." I mean, you don't know what's happening here. And then as a school principal, you feel the same. And I was doing that with full passion. But I think that I never gave up teaching. Because I think that's my core responsibility. That's what I'm very good at. I'm also very good at
teaching even while you were a principal?
Always,
Okay.
really. Always. I was an English teacher and a history teacher. And I do not think I would have been able to be just a school leader without really teaching that's my core competency. But I think I also grew as a school leader and learned a lot of it on my own because, like I said, there was no training. But if you are passionate and if you want to make a difference, so we used to call ourselves, so I was in the city of Pune then, and we a couple of us who were doing similar work. And we used to think that we are the renaissance of Pune education, because we were bringing about these changes. We were reading at that time, I'm talking about the 90s, books like Toto Chan or Dibs or Victor, and things like that. And we're thinking that, this is what is a learning that has to be done. This is what we need to do for kids. So I think that I was, happy and successful in doing what I did at that time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I kind of always take back is I always say that the power of a school leader is immense, right? In terms of, there's this common saying that says when the school leader, sneezes, the school catches a cold. It's like that serious. And there has been studies in the US that show that almost 27% impact of school leadership is directly seen in learning outcomes of schools, which means school leadership is phenomenally powerful. It's a high leverage sort of leadership position. Is there anything you think that school leaders, or let's say school principals who have been in the job for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, is there anything that they can do to really kind of make change happen? And most of the time this change is slow, right? It's not like really fast change. So how would you get them to start thinking about change? How do we get them to start saying that, hey, you have authority, you have agency? Is there anything you'd like to share with me in terms of...
Sure. My first comment would be on what you just said before you asked the question about UK and that, the responsibility that they have. So the thing is that kind of responsibility of good learning in our schools lies with the teachers. That's the difference. It lies with the teachers.
No, wait. What does
so
that
like
mean?
you said that in UK or in other countries, the learning responsibility of the students, lies clearly with the head teacher or the headmaster, headmistress, whatever you want to say, because they are academic leaders, you know. But here, the academic leadership lies in the coordinators, the head teachers, the head of the departments, and so on. The principal has the responsibility of the result, percentages. Who got what, who's in the board, etc., etc. I mean, that's also not really a responsibility. It's just taken because
Managing.
the school. I mean, managing to make sure that the teachers are teaching well. And that's what becomes the role of the leader. So I think that we are very far from that. But for your other question, that what do you think we need to do to make sure that, you know, what is lacking? Is there something we can do for the school leaders to become, you know, more
Academic leaders, no?
more productive in their work, actually? So we thought about this a lot when we started Shikshangan in 2008. One of the things we wanted to do was a school leadership program, you know, because we were very keen and we knew that it's not happening. So we studied the leadership programs which are run by IIM Ahmedabad, IIM Kolkata, and many other institutes. We have friends everywhere. We looked at their curriculum. They're doing a great job, but you have to know that they come from the perspective of management. Okay, so the courses are management, organization, administration heavy. There is not much of a component of academic leadership because they are not coming from that domain of school academics. You know? Because there is an idea of a syllabus, an idea of a curriculum, an idea of a pedagogy, formative assessments, and all of that. And there is a LO document, as you know. I mean, there are learning objectives. And how do you convert those into your syllabus plans, your lesson plans, and
That's
so on?
not easy.
No, and I mean, the other institutes are not coming from that. So I'm not saying whether it's easy or difficult. You need to be coming from there. So, well, we are coming from there.
Yeah.
Because you have had to be a teacher first. You have to have taught, which I did for a long time in Mumbai. You have to have led a school. You have to have been an academic, leader for a group of teachers. And then you can actually develop a program. So I think the program that Shikshangan offers, which is a school leadership program, has these three buckets, which are very, very nicely designed. Academic leadership, that can be done by anybody, even your team sitting here. How do you do? Personal leadership is the first component. How do you develop yourself as a person, regardless of your field of work? The second component is organizational leadership, which is how do you manage this organization, which in this case is a school. So that has recruitment, finances, budgeting, etc., developing your team, motivating your team, and so on, planning, for example. But the critical component there is academic leadership. Because out of a 5-day program, we spend about 2.5 days on academic leadership. So we do have a lot of school principals who come to us who are senior, and they say that this is for teachers. This particular thing I want to focus more on, budgeting and etc. etc. So we say no, but unless you know this, how will you assist your teachers? Because your principal job is to actually guide your teachers in how do you make sure that good learning is happening, and good learning is happening for every single child sitting in your classroom. So academic leadership is the differentiator, and I think Shikshangan sort of brings that up pretty well.
I mean, from what you're saying, for me, it's quite eye-opening because in all my 20 years, right, I never thought that academic leadership / instructional leadership and all that were purely in the hands of teachers. Now, let me explain what I'm saying. When I hear you say that, I just don't disagree with it at all. It's just that it never came to me. I always felt like that was the responsibility of the school leader. Maybe it's with the literature, that I'm reading or I'm exposed to. Maybe it's not very contextual. But you're so true, because the class teacher, apart from having a pastoral responsibility of her children, also deeply is entrenched in making sure that child learns and, all that academic thing is there. Right. Which now means that even this name, saying school leadership program, itself may be like pulling in the wrong kind of people in, right? Because it almost feels like there is no school leadership sort of thing. Academic leadership is for everybody. Every teacher, every coordinator, every manager, every principal, everyone. If you have to work in a team, if you have to support each other, if you have to be one team, one mission, and if you want to be like centered around that child, it's like every person in the army has to learn to shoot. Everyone is a Jawan first. After that, they will be whoever they are, right?
Right.
I think that is very, very, very critical for me. And for me, then it suddenly opens up this entire opportunity to, I will start thinking about even sending teachers for this program.
Absolutely.
I will not think, अरे ये principal leadership है तो सिर्फ principals को भेजना है. I can send teachers because they're the ones who are doing all the heavy lifting.
True.
You know, so in that sense, that was really, really powerful for me. So let's look at it this way. In the US, when I visited a school, there was they have this concept called the entry plan. And you know what the entry plan means? The entry plan is like when a principal joins a school, the management or the district over there expects that principal to write 100-day plan. It's really cool. It talks about what are you going to do over the next 100 days.
Correct.
And that gives like visible insight into that person's understanding, depth, this, that, and at least potential failure paths can be identified and negated. If you have to think of, let's say, 100-day plan for a principal, a new principal just joined and took on that responsibility, what do you think should a new principal be looking at, or an existing principal who decides to say, "Aaj se main academic leader."
I wish there was a magic like that. Ki aaj se main academic leader. But it's a good question, you know. And since you mentioned US, you would know that there are school districts in US.
Yes.
So if you want to buy a property in the US, the school which is doing very well, the property around that school is very expensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, can you imagine that?
It's
So the
amazing.
prices of the properties get decided by the quality of the school in that district.
amazing.
We're very far away from that. But if you were to, so the other question about a 100-day plan. So I'm not saying that school leaders should not do the other part, which is
Yeah.
organizational leadership, recruitments, and all of the rest of it, which we talked about. But I would definitely put in a lot of components of academic leadership there for those 100 days. For example, even simple things like, making sure whether your teachers are doing professional readings. I think it's completely missing because what do they really get their teachers to read, find out, and what do they subscribe to? It would be an interesting thing to find out actually, because you're going around and you're asking. And once the teachers read whatever they're reading, what do they do about it? Do they make presentations based on it? Do they have a space for professional discussions amongst their staff? I would budget time for that. I would ensure that everybody is reading, because I've also seen, these are my insights after all these years and all the nice silver in my hair, which I love. So my insights are that India doesn't read. Okay, I'm making a strong statement. In the sense that the last
We have bigger
time...
TVs than libraries at home.
Yes. And I think, though we're doing this podcast, the reels and everything has made it even worse for readers. And the thing is that the last time the teachers might have read something which was linked to education, I'm not talking their subject, was when they finished their B.Ed. All right? After that, they're reading their textbooks and some reference materials. We also don't have great journals of education that we publish in our country. But there are fantastic journals which we can subscribe to. So getting them to read and then getting them to discuss what they're reading is what would help them grow professionally, apart from coaching and training, of course, So that's one thing that I would definitely put into my 100-day plan, apart from both internal and external coaching. Lots of observations. So there's this other thing that we have in our country, that don't observe the senior teachers. I say observe all. The frequency can reduce, but observe all. But just observing is not enough. The feedback also has to be immediate. It has to be feedback for development and not a feedback for getting you out of the job. So a lot of such stuff would come in my 100-day plan. But I would focus very clearly, as you can see from what I'm saying, on the instructional leadership part.
This is
for my own role.
This, to me, this sounds like such a hack, because reading is free. Okay, it's just that there is no time in the timetable for it. Correct? We don't have a time which says that all teachers are going to sit and read. And there is no other time that we've said that all teachers who have read will now make a presentation or talk or discuss or create some event out of it.
Put
Right?
that into your plan.
I'm going to do that. I mean, for my personal school, I'm definitely going to do that. But I really feel like so many school principals should get started with that because that is easy to do. And I think that, I don't know what it is, whether it's the Matthew principle or the Peter principle, one of the two. They say that a teacher can't give what she does not have.
Yeah.
And what you're really working on is building that knowledge within that teacher,
Yes.
right? What would you want them to read? Like, just an example, because I'm super curious on this.
Sure.
now.
I'll tell you
what
that.
does that look like?
And this is a part of the component of our school leadership program. In fact, when you said you must be getting the wrong people in, we don't, because we disclose the entire curriculum before they register. And so if they think that this is for teachers, don't come. It's fine.
Expectations are set.
Absolutely. And you're so right about saying I'd send teachers, because those teachers will one day become school leaders.
Right.
I hope.
Right.
I hope everybody rises, and I have everybody, because schools are no longer flat organizations. Earlier they were when I was a teacher, but now there is a hierarchy there, and there is a position.
There's
they
mobility
can,
happening.
absolutely. So for reading, I also I read that when you read and think about this, I think it's something very interesting. When you read a written piece of text, you know what happens? You are actually, there is a low muscle movement in your throat, which is voicing that word.
Okay.
Think about that. If you read anything, you are
Like,
also...
even if you read in your mind.
Even if you read in your mind right now. So there is a low muscle movement, which is voicing that word. It never happens in podcasts. It never happens in audiobooks, ever. So reading is... and therefore all the signals go to the brain and the retention is better and all of that. But what do you read? So I subscribe to a lot of ASCD publications.
American Society.
Yeah, American, it's like
for
Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development.
ASCD is huge,
ASCD
right?
is huge. So what I really like and I would recommend is a magazine or a journal which is called Education Leadership. You get 8 issues in a year only. But the bonus is that with, I think twice a year, you get 4 books which are top-notch research. And they come to you free of cost on this subscription. And that's where I draw all my stuff from.
Amazing. And they can be easy to contextualize.
Yes.
I think one of the things is we are so filled with excuses. Oh, there's no time. Management will not allow. Parents will not accept. My teachers don't want to do anything. I think we are so full of all these excuses.
Or then this is from the West.
Oh, this is on the West. This doesn't work in India.
But I say that the children are the same all over the world.
Very
And
true.
teachers are the same all over the world. And I think, and I've also trained, and so I also do a lot of teacher training. And I've done it all over India. And I've done it from government schools to CBSE, ICSE, IB, IGCSE, everywhere. And I think that a state board curriculum can be a jewel in the hand of a good teacher. And an IB curriculum can be messed up in the hand of a lousy teacher. So it's really nothing much. You need to prepare your teachers very well. That's what it is.
The hero in this whole story is a teacher.
Absolutely.
The hero is this teacher. Like there have been times when parents have walked up to me and said, "Sir, sab acha hai. Aap sikhate hai kya?" Like, long awkward silence. Then because the teacher is so important. And then if you look at compensation styles, lowest salary will go to early childhood. Slightly more will go to primary. When you look at that and you just start seeing that it doesn't seem to make sense because teaching is the same. I think the amount of effort. What are your
I think
thoughts
more
on that?
effort on pre-primary. I would pay them more. They put in a lot more effort because children are so young and there's so much to be done. But yes, you're right that there are these gradations. But I think when I was a teacher, and my happiest times, I'm happy now as well as a teacher educator, but we were really not so focused on the money that we were earning.
Yeah.
But then today's teachers are, it's like LinkedIn, you're for a few dollars more, for a few rupees more, some other job. And they're constantly looking at, because of course aspirations have gone up and, there is inflation, all of that. But also, not your school, but also because schools are charging a lot of fees.
Yeah.
So the minute you charge this huge amount of fees, I think the parent becomes a customer. Because then the parent starts saying, I'm paying you a lot, you please deliver. And anyway, parents should be questioning if you're not. But it has changed a lot in the last 20, 25 years. So teachers also are looking at monetary benefits, and why not?
Of course.
And why not? So I would pay the pre-primary the most, I think, and not have too many silos in the school. So the other
Explain that, silos in school.
Silos,
Because it might look like fantastic organizational strategies, but how it goes against, it's a counterintuitive thing.
So you've gone to school in India, and so have I. We didn't have pre-primary teachers separate, primary separate, secondary separate, and so on. Even until I was a school principal, I used to say that I will put you anywhere. Okay. So you might be teaching in third, you might be teaching in eighth. So you should be able to teach anything. When I got my first job in Bombay in Pali Hill, I was a teacher, and I wanted that school. But when I went there, she said, "I want you to teach Marathi in grade 3." I said,
you were
"I
an
have
English
never
teacher."
studied Marathi. I can only speak Marathi." She said, "That's good enough." I said, "Fine."
Wow.
So I said, "I'll teach Marathi in grade 3 and literature in grade 9.
Wow.
English." So I was doing Julius Caesar. But that kind of mobility, movement, so then you own the entire school. Now, if you ask a secondary school teacher, what's the admission process in your school? She'll say, "I have no idea." That's the silo. So pre-primary, I don't know anything.
It's not one team, one mission.
Not at all. Pre-primary says, "I have no idea what's happening in secondary." So primary might say that I don't know. I think it's good in terms of dividing the syllabus or the curriculum, because then you know what are the minimum learning levels to be achieved. Like you have PYP and MYP in the international board, in the IB. But teachers, I think, should be flexible to be able to go anywhere. Because that's probably my thinking, but it's not working that way anymore.
I'm going to ask you a crazy question.
Yeah.
Okay. What can I do to retain my best teachers? I'll tell you why I'm asking this. Because most of the time, it is the better teachers who leave. It is the better teachers who leave because of so many reasons. What does a teacher want? What does she want? I mean, if you tell me a teacher only wants to teach and make impact in a child's life, she can do that in any school because children are the same everywhere. Correct? No.
Right.
What can I do as a school principal, or what can I do to make sure that the teacher is proud of associating with my school? What can I do to increase her prestige? What can I do to make her feel like she can do much more than what she does?
Sure.
Got
it.
I'm sure she wants to do it. But there's something little, like, what do you think?
So if you've met other expectations, like, I'm not going to talk about salary.
Like
and
hygiene factor. Like salary,
all that is met.
yeah.
All that is met. And if teachers are still leaving, I do not know what the reasons could be. But if you ask me what would I do, I would develop them professionally. I'd keep doing stuff which will help them grow professionally, and they know that there is a future out there for them, and a pat on the back and a feedback, which makes them feel that they are being valued. Because how do you make your team feel valued in your organization? One way of doing it, there are many ways. One way of doing it is that I care enough about you to sort of, have a budget for your development, even though you're working for me. And never be scared of this thing. I hear this so often that, no, I don't want to spend on teacher training because then I train them and then they leave and they go to some other school. Well, my answer there is that doesn't matter. They're still working in some school. They will still be impacting some lives. So even though you spent here, because देखो विली, एक national mission भी तो है ना.
Yeah.
I mean, we are in education. No? I mean, I see my work, even the YouTube channel, as a mission for the nation, not for one teacher and definitely not for one school. So we're developing teachers, doesn't matter where they go, they'll still make a difference to the lives of some children somewhere. So that's the way I'd look at it, and I'd keep developing them and I'd keep talking to them about it, that I'm doing this because I want you to grow.
I think what you're saying there is teachers can feel growth in themselves.
Yeah. They feel themselves getting better.
They can see themselves getting better. Maybe somebody else tells them, hey, you were different when you joined. And abhi dekho kahan par ho. And these things I think are super invaluable. Yeah. Right? And a lot of that has to be done by the school leader or the school principal.
Who else will do it?
Correct? Who else will do it? Now, the challenge that I personally, when I was a young school principal at the age of 25, 26, the challenge personally for me was, maybe I wasn't mature enough at that time, to be able to hold them accountable and to be able to coach and guide them and correct them at the same time. So I was the guy responsible for training them, and then the guy responsible then to hold them accountable. Now, I found that really difficult to do just from a psychological perspective. There's so much transference happening and so much, because I really know how hard teachers work and how hard many of their lives are. But my mother, somehow, she would do it so
Easily.
so easily and so beautifully. Is there any secrets
One of the
that all you
reason-
mothers know?
No, it's more than the mothers. It's about having been teachers. Was your mother a teacher? I'm
Yes.
sure she was.
Yes.
So if you've been there, then it's easier because you have experienced that yourself. Maybe you haven't been there as a school teacher, so it's tough for you. So, and then I think the teachers also are more accepting of someone who has been a teacher, who has seen what it is to stand there and teach for 8 hours and manage a bunch of 30, 40 kids throughout the day. It's never an easy. But then who said teaching was easy? Every child is different. Every class is different. You have different syllabus, different. I mean, it keeps changing. There's so many variables there. So I think that's one. But then, about accountability. I mean, if you have given enough autonomy, then accountability is hand in hand. It's like freedom and responsibility. So it's the same thing, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think it's so difficult. Teachers are usually accountable for whatever work you have given them. So make them, try to also see whether they can make presentations, whether they can present papers at seminars and conferences, whatever India has. Teacher Plus is an excellent magazine. I don't know whether you subscribe to that.
No,
It's
Teacher
from,
Plus, huh?
Yeah, it's supported by Azim Premji University. It's published from Hyderabad. And Teacher Plus is very open to publishing teachers' articles. So if they're doing something which is exciting and where learning is happening in the class and want to write about it, just make sure that gets published, because seeing your name in print, seeing that,
Boosts prestige.
yeah, here's someone who's asking us to do this, I'm telling you that they will stay with you. They won't go because you are the one who's telling them that I want you to be good in your work, and I'm here. I'm willing to showcase your work outside the school.
It just shows that you're proud of having them on your team,
Absolutely.
right? And that itself is such a powerful thing. Somebody told me the brain does not need wealth for to work. It just needs water. So what that means is, like, so much of school transformation, school development, quality improvement doesn't necessarily need to go the input method in terms of money.
No.
You don't need sophisticated ed-tech equipment, or you don't need all these fancy things. You just probably need somebody who is determined to make that change happen in the school. So tell me a little bit more about this leadership program. How can people, get to it? Where can they find more information about you?
It's
What are
on
the kind
social
of people
media.
you want?
Yeah, it's on social media. So we have, of course, a Facebook page. We also have something on LinkedIn. So there are regular announcements which come from Shikshangan. And we also have a YouTube channel that you're aware of. So this is a program that before the pandemic, we used to do it twice a year, once in summer and once in winter. It's in a residential mode in the Western Ghats, where
Lovely.
Shikshangan is housed. It's a 5-day residential mode program. And it's great because, whenever it's a residential mode, it's great bonding. And the sharing of best practices happens.
It's a
because
cohort.
Yes, it's so big because people come from all over the country, so that's nice. And we do not ever say that, okay, now we have got some government school principals, so we will not take from IB. So we mix everybody.
Wow.
So we learn, everyone learns from everyone. The announcements are made regularly. Even there are emailers, flyers, which are sent out. So the next one will be in winter. And I've explained about what's the component of that program.
The 4 buckets or 3 buckets.
Yeah, 3 buckets. And I seriously recommend that senior teachers, senior in the sense, not necessarily in age, but those who are aspiring to become leaders should definitely go through this, because, that will prepare them very well, because we do not have a preparatory course over here. We have very nice courses, like, we have courses on education, philosophy of education, and so on. But it doesn't necessarily touch upon the practice. It's a lot more about understanding
The principles.
Dewey and understanding all the thinkers and so
What could be 5, let's say 3, 4, 5, whatever. What do you think is a minimum number of any school teacher or any school leader should know? Maybe rattle off a few names of theorists At least I'll go do my reading.
No, I don't think that you need to rattle off anything. You need to read about them. You need to read. So I'll be very happy to share a list of what is essential reading that one must do to be able to understand the domain of education. I mean K-12 education.
K-12.
Okay? To understand the domain of K-12, what kind of reading should be done. And then just meet people and try to understand from them what the practices have been.
Do you have any? Have you done any innovation around? Maybe you haven't. I was just thinking because someone once asked me, "What is the heart of your school, Willie Broad? What is the heart of your school?" And he asked in a very funny kind of way because he had a very clear answer what he wanted me to give. And I looked at him. I did my math in my head and I said, "The heart of a school, according to me." And he was like, yeah. What is it? I said, according to me, it's the timetable. And he just burst out. He just burst out laughing. He's like, rubbish. That's not what it is. It's supposed to be this and that and all that. And I'm like, no, look, it's timetable because I will only get done what I've scheduled for. Right? Like if I need to give 8 hours for math and if I give 4 hours of math, I should not be wondering why my math scores are going down. So do you think timetable is something that is archaic and age old and people generally don't touch it?
I think even decades ago I wasn't giving it much importance because I was very flexible timetables, very, very flexible. There were sometimes children just wanted to study geography for 3 hours. Sometimes they wanted to do science for 4 hours. So it was flexible. We had a timetable. I mean, even though at the risk of, it doesn't matter anymore now, but we used to have a timetable for the inspection, which was put up when the inspectors came and, we're doing this. But we used to have an internal flexible timetable depending on what we wanted to do, making sure, of course, that we cover the syllabus, in the sense, I don't like the word cover. I mean, it's actually to uncover the syllabus. Yeah. But we used to make sure that they get those many hours for math and those many hours for language and etc., etc. So I don't think so. If you ask me what is the heart of the school, actually, especially now after COVID, I think it's ensuring that there is no learning gap. Okay, just ensuring that you accelerate the learning for everyone who's lagging behind. So, and we don't call them slow learners. Everyone, there are children who are lagging behind for various reasons. They missed school, they didn't pay attention, they couldn't hang on to that Zoom or whatever happened. And they're lagging behind. So ensuring that you accelerate the learning such that bring them up to speed with the rest of the class. Because there are children here, there are children here. You do remedial, these children move up. These might remain here or move up a little bit more. But the gap remains the same. But when you accelerate, you bring them up to speed. And I would say that should be the heart of your school.
And I can see why I should change my answer now. Because, merely giving time for something doesn't mean it will get done.
No.
Correct? It's got to be more intentional and there's so much more effort that goes into it. But I love what you're saying about this different varying levels because, not everyone's going to get it at the same time. However, one of the research reports that I read in the US spoke about the great impact high expectations have when teachers and academic leaders or when instructional, instructors
the Pygmalion
effect, right? Correct. So when they have high expectations from their children tend to generally rise up to that. Any thoughts around that?
There is. You know where that comes from, right? The Pygmalion, George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion.
Half the kids were told, the teacher were told that these guys are brilliant.
Yeah. So actually, Pygmalion was a play written by George Bernard Shaw.
Okay.
And it was converted to a movie called My Fair Lady, which you might have seen, Audrey Hepburn's. And there, if you know, or maybe you haven't seen, but there is this Professor Henry Higgins, and he meets this country girl who's speaking country English on a train. And he says that, I'll teach you English and I will take you to the Queen's Ball and I assure you that nobody will know that you had a country accent. So that's where the word Pygmalion comes from, that set high expectations and children will deliver. And then they did this experiment where kids were A class, B class, which you know. And so this is true, that if you set high expectations of your children, both your biological children as well as your students, they will deliver. But, the high expectations also, I think, should not be such that they are unreachable for your child. Because that could be very frustrating. So looking at the, where is your child and, setting, I would say, appropriate expectations.
It's like a +1,
Yeah,
not a
appropriate
+5 or
expectations.
something,
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
+1.
yeah.
So that I think again is like very powerful, right? These are things that
They are, but Willie, I think that there are lots of experiments that which get talked about. There's a lot of jargon in education, like Pygmalion experiment. Then there is a marshmallow experiment, which
yes,
you know,
delayed gratification.
delayed gratification, and all of that. But I think that okay, just work with the kids.
Yeah,
Okay, work with the kids.
be in the here and
Yeah,
now.
make
right?
sure that they know what they have to know.
Send them back with what they need to know today, right?
And even in that, I mean, I'm a huge champion of vocabulary. So I think vocabulary. I can't say that enough. If you can just get vocabulary done. And again, when I say vocabulary, the first thought you might get is English. But there is a vocabulary of every subject. I mean, if you say revolution in history, it means something else. A revolution in geography means something else.
Or physics means something else.
And
like
physics
everything.
means something else. If
So
you
this
say,
is like word knowledge to world knowledge.
but yeah, absolutely. So when you get the vocabulary done, for children who are lagging behind in the pandemic and even otherwise, if you can bring them up to speed, first attack the vocabulary because each word has knowledge, isn't it?
It's figurative.
Yeah, the word is a
knowledge.
word because I understand it that way. So you get that done, and half your battle is won. So create lists of vocabulary. We don't have a lexile system in India at
No,
all.
we don't have a
We
lexile
don't
system,
have.
yeah.
So you don't know which words in grade 1, which words in grade 2. We don't have
And
these
this
lists.
is not the let's say the sight word lists. This is
No, sight words are Deutsch list.
Deutsch
No,
list, right?
yeah.
We are not talking about the Fry words.
No,
or
I'm
Deutsch
talking
list. We're
about vocabulary.
Vocabulary, meaning.
Meaning. So what do you do and what would your teachers do? They will take the vocabulary in the textbook that you prescribe.
That's it.
That's
Hard
it.
word, underline
Hard
this.
word
This
bolte
means
the
this.
So what we are now championing from Shikshangan, and we are working hard at that, and it's an ongoing process, is we're developing a lexile. That how
Wow.
many words should... So basically we're saying about 10,000 words by grade 7.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
That
And
means more access to knowledge and understanding.
because
and
words are
comprehension.
knowledge. Yeah.
Comprehension just goes up, right?
But then, of course, we don't say the way we did it, the way our teachers did it. We're
No,
not
no,
saying
no.
that word
No
meaning and
dictation
use.
word. No,
नहीं,
we're not talking about dictation.
wala
word.
bhi nahi hai.
Exactly.
And we're also not saying underline and give the meaning. So we are playing around with those words. Multiple interaction with every word.
This is amazing. Like I want to go back home and go straight to my school. And you know what I want to do? I want to pick up a textbook and I want to write down. I want to document, list, and index every new word that comes into that. I want to be able to look at a word and say, this word, this is the first time in the life of this child in this school that this word has appeared. And then I'm going to break it down into the morpheme, bounded morpheme, root word, this word.
Everything.
I'm going to
Just
break
play
that
around,
down.
yeah.
I mean, it's just going to
Yeah.
blow their mind, right? It's just going to open up so many things.
Also, many words, not all, but many words have multiple meanings. Like if
Yes.
you take the word spike. Spike generally means something which has a rod, it's got a sharp thing. But then you say spiked hair, you have spiked shoes. You say
Or a spike
porcupine
in
spikes.
investments, or a spike in
current,
expenses.
spike in the ECG, a spike in your drink. So therefore, spike has multiple
Meaning, it's
ways.
figurative.
Yeah. So I think vocabulary, and we have a lot of work on that on our YouTube channel on vocabulary and how do you play around with the words.
I think this is incredible insight. This is something that you can just go and you can start seeing change happen immediately. It's also a low-hanging fruit because children are going to be able to learn new things. They'll then go show off that knowledge. Then they'll start feeling better about themselves. And
Absolutely.
it's an upward spiral.
Yeah. So
Right.
I'd say that do that because you'll be doing a huge favor if
Done.
you can
I'm
just,
doing it. I am like totally motivated and I'm just
And I'd
so
love to
spirited.
assist in whatever way you think Shikshangan can. I mean, we're developing Lexile, like I said, and happy to share because it's time to share.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much for taking so much time out and sharing so openly your strategies, your ideas, your wisdom that you've collected over time. I'm sure that a lot of school principals, teachers, parents, children, we're going to be taking back and this is the sort of thing that you don't know that you've made an impact. It's the ripple effect. It's a butterfly effect. Thank you for
Thank
everything
you
do.
for organizing this, and a very big thanks to your team as well for being here. All right. Thank you, Willie.
Thanks.